Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Jones. Welcome to Interchange, and thank you so very much for joining us. Again, lots to talk about today. Governor Scott Walker gets pretty much the exact budget he wanted and a big victory from the Supreme Court. But again, the deep partisan divide is so extremely evident. We're also going to talk about the departing chancellor at the University of Wisconsin. Was she collateral damage from this budget battle? And we're going to talk about the latest anti-smoking initiatives. Now some folks want to make it illegal to even light up in a public park. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone. We have newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, longtime broadcaster, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Denise Callaway is the coordinator of business and community partnerships for the Milwaukee Public School System. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, the first thing we'll talk about is state politics again. Governor Walker wins big when the Supreme Court rules in his favor in the case involving doing away with most collective bargaining for public employees. And then, later in the week, the state legislature gives him pretty much the exact two-year budget that he wanted. But all the Democrats voted against it, all the Republicans voted for it. Is that an unhealthy divide, or, Denise, is it simply the nature of how things work in a two-party political system?
Well, I think it's unhealthy. I think that we have two parties in this country. As citizens, we don't expect that people are always going to vote along the party line, and that we become that partisan. Really, I don't think is good for democracy. I don't think it's good for this state. We find that I think better things happen when we have the opportunity and the ability to compromise, and compromise takes place. By the nature of compromise, that means there are some things that each party was able to get and each party was able to give. And I think that's the healthy way for government to run. It's a dangerous path for us to go down, I believe, to say that whatever party is in power gets exactly what it wants, and whatever party that isn't in power that still was elected, as in the case of the legislature, by significant numbers of individuals, find that they don't get what they want. I don't think it's a good way for us, if our motto is forward in this state, to actually move forward. So it's disappointing. And I think it, unfortunately, perhaps then sets the table for the way that when the pendulum swings, and it will, to the other party, that is this the way we would expect the Democrats to act, where it's everything that the Democrats want. And again, it I think puts us in a situation where we find that pendulum that tends to switch and swing in politics, finding itself doing it in much, much shorter burst, where we're not looking at 8 years or 12 years. Are we looking at 4 years or 2 years? I don't think that's a healthy way for us to run government, where it's whoever who's in power brings in what they want, and we don't have a bigger and greater vision for what needs to be done in the state and how we need to work together to accomplish those things.
You know, Gerard, I told a friend of mine the other day, Walker is a polarizing governor, and there's a lot of articles and observations that say the Republicans in the legislature right now are polarizing figures, and they said, yeah, but that's not necessarily a negative thing.
Well, I don't remember Doyle being any less polarizing, to be perfectly honest. I saw that during those years when the legislature was in the control of his party, that there were those occasions when they too ran roughshod over the minority party and invoked legislation that Republicans found repugnant. I do think, though, that this wide swing of the pendulum, as Denise pointed out, that where we've got the far right and the far left, that at some point that's going to have to be moderated, because the public is not going to stand for too many of these wild swings in policy when most of the state sit pretty much in the middle. And that's what I think the expectation is among the average voter, is that there be policy that they can understand, that they can buy into, that they agree with. And right now, what we're getting is the opportunity for some of those pieces of legislation to be enacted that it's been sitting on the docket for a long time for the Republicans. There had been pieces that have been sitting on the docket for a long time for Democrats. Their wish list, so to speak. And those are the pieces that are being enacted now. And at some point, we're going to have to gravitate back towards the middle. You're going to see a lot of that, I think, when the 2012 elections roll around and the whole assembly is up for re-election and a good number of the state senators are up for re-election, all of Congress. you're going to see people then make that pitch for more moderation and not for advocacy of legislation that caters more to the fringe in a party as opposed to that larger majority of voters that will be out there exercising their right.
Joel, I heard Governor Walker on the radio today, and he was saying, as I travel around the state right now, people are telling me, I'm tired of fighting, I want the arguing to stop. Do you believe him?
Well, I think that is the attitude of the public. The negative feedback about the Democrats that control the Congress was it's the same old partisan junk. You know, you guys are in charge, the president's in charge, and you could have both houses of the Congress, and still there's all this partisan bickering. And the interesting thing, Gerard is absolutely wrong about one thing. There is something different going on right now in politics, and it's going on in the Republican Party. The Republican Party got rid of the moderates, got rid of the liberals. There used to be liberal Republicans, and they're now governed by the extreme. The Democrats, truthfully, they're conservative Democrats and they're liberal Democrats. It is not a far left party in this state by any means. When the extreme Republicans took over, and Walker is definitely an extreme Republican governor, and this is an extreme Republican legislature. They repealed 50 years of legislation on collective bargaining. That 50 years included Tommy Thompson's administration, included Scott McCallum's administration, included many things that were done under Republicans in control. This is an extremist party now. They have gotten rid of moderates in the Republican Party. And that is why this is so polarizing. When you say polarizing, it is, yes. I mean, good God, if you're going to cut education, but don't cut it by $800 million, you know, because you're a conservative. And you know, that, you know, and then, interesting, Gerard a few weeks ago said, well, you know, some of these things seem extreme, but then when it finally comes out in the wash, it won't be that extreme.
And I was right.
Yeah,
I was right.
Instead of $900 million, it's $800 million cutting education. I'm sorry, that is still an extremist.
And the amount that Doyle wasn't any different than that. The amount that Doyle cut from the higher ed budget was the same,
We're talking about
if not more than what.
And
I'm talking public education. You're talking about the K-12.
Yes,
and Doyle cut K-12. His commitment to K-12 education was just about the same as what Walker's is. If you look at the percentage,
he restored hundreds of millions of dollars.
He didn't restore it until his second 2 years of office.
Kevin, after the Supreme Court came down with their decision, the Journal ran a poll the next day, and I know it's not a scientific poll. Yeah, I know it's not a scientific poll, but they said, "Do you agree with the Supreme Court's decision supporting Scott Walker?" And more than 30,000 people responded to that poll. 2-1, they supported Walker. Now, I thought that was pretty surprising.
Well, let's keep in mind, okay, the real poll that matters is that one on Election Day. The Republicans ran on fiscal reform and restoring fiscal sanity to our state. No more of these budgets where we kick the can down the street to the next generation and dump all the heavy bills on them. No more outrageous taxing and spending money that we don't have. There was the most dramatic shift in political power in the entire country was right here in Wisconsin, where Republicans took over the governor's mansion, both houses of the legislature. People wanted what happened this week, a budget that wiped out the $3 billion deficit that this new governor and new legislature inherited. It wiped out the structural deficit. It did so without raising taxes. It froze property taxes, and now you have sane budgeting for the first time in years and years and years, and we don't have to worry about going into the next budget cycle with $3 billion in the hole. We actually have a $300 million surplus as we sit here today. That's good news.
It's not that clean, though. You take a look at the last poll that's been done. 50% of the people who were polled, and this wasn't a journal poll, it was a scientific poll, do not approve of what's happening at the state capitol. They don't. So, I mean, to say this idea, this is what everybody wants, actual polls that are scientifically done show that that's not the case. Half the people in the state do not approve of it.
You know, sort of related, early on in the budget battle, the chancellor at the University of Wisconsin came out in favor of spinning Madison off out of the UW system in exchange for more autonomy and independence. Unfortunately, she didn't appear to check with the Board of Regents first. They didn't like the idea at all. This week, Biddy Martin announced she was leaving the job, taking a different job. It's hard not to imagine those two things weren't related.
I think they were related. If this were her dream job and she had gotten what she had hoped for in the budget process, would she still be here? I think she'd still be here. She did not communicate well with those people who were responsible for the governance of the very operation that she wanted to radically change. And that was the real death knell for her tenure. I do believe, though, that it puts the system in an awkward position of having to go and find someone of high caliber that will come in and take all those challenges that they're facing, huge cuts, and trying to keep very talented leadership among those campuses. And certainly the major campuses like Madison, Milwaukee, some of the larger comprehensives, their leadership is being picked off all around the country because they see them as very talented, very seasoned administrators. So that's going to be a hard sell within the Board of Regents as to how they're going to come up with that talent that's going to keep them afloat. And Martin was one of them that they thought was going to be around for a lot longer.
She did her successor, whom we don't know who that will be, a huge favor, because that person can now come in and look at how she really failed to have a firm grasp of understanding of the culture here in Wisconsin. Now, you could argue that there was some merit to what she wanted to do, and there was. But it was
she didn't sell it.
But it was a very dramatic, radical proposal that she was putting forth, and she did not. You're right. She did not sell it well to the citizens of the state, to the legislature, even the governor. Now, also, it's a tough sell because there's merit to keeping the system the way it is. We have one of the best, universities in the entire country. You come in and say, well, we're going to upset the apple carts, and you better be able to make a pretty good argument for that, because there's a strong case to leave everything the way it is right now.
Denise, she was basically saying, okay, I can buy into you cutting our budget if you spin us off and then let us raise tuition to the level that we need it. And unfortunately, the Regents didn't like that idea at all.
Well, they didn't like that idea because it weakens the system overall. It makes our flagship university something that's less accessible to middle-class families in the state. And that is abhorrent. It's not the way in which we want to move. It weakened the system overall because you had that kind of domino effect. Then, UW Milwaukee said, well, wait, we want to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, we'd like some
we'd like to be able to do that and raise tuition as we'd like. And then you found that other pieces of the system wanted to be able to do the same thing. And what you had the potential of having were two outstanding, strong universities, and UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee, and everybody else. You can't in a public state university system, you can't do that. You really need to have that autonomy so students have the ability to transfer back and forth from one institution to another. You have the ability to have that flagship university, and UW-Madison really work to help strengthen some of the others.
But some argue that it is extremely difficult for a kid to get into Madison now. Why shouldn't they be allowed to charge twice as much? If there's such a long waiting line to get in, why shouldn't they be able to charge more to get into that university?
Well, I can't blame Biddy Martin for taking the presidency of one of the most prestigious private colleges in America. I'm not so sure that I think perhaps the independence she showed from her own board and from some of her associates might have been because of the possibility of this other job on the horizon. But I got to say, any chancellor of a public university in Wisconsin who throws in with Scott Walker secretly and then breaks it on the public, raises real serious questions, because I don't think there are very many people who believe that Scott Walker's interest is education in this state, and the quality of education in this state, and the future of education in this state. If it was, he would have put together an entirely different kind of budget. I don't blame her for going. I don't know if she was pushed out. I know there were people around ready to push her out.
She saw the handwriting on the wall,
ready to push her out, but I'm not so sorry to see her go either, because I don't think she had the best interest of education in this state.
Now most of those regions, though, most of those regions were appointed by Doyle. If they were friendlier to Walker, Martin's idea might have been an easier sell.
Well, I don't know about that either, because I think at the end of the day, it was all about communication and how she communicated. This idea comes up perennially. It wasn't a new idea. The way she went about doing it is that she talked to the governor, and that wasn't the wrong thing to do.
No.
It was
I'm going to go to the newspapers.
That's right. It was a step that she took that should have happened somewhat later. And frankly, where she really ran afoul was in the legislature, and she hired every known Republican lobbyist that had any juice in the legislature, and they weren't able to help that thing move along either, particularly with people like Steve Nass.
All right, next topic. Okay, first it was no smoking in the workplace. Then it was no smoking in any public buildings. Then it was no smoking in bars or restaurants. Now there's a push for no smoking in public parks. They just did it a few weeks ago in New York City. It's illegal there now, and there's a group that's pushing for it in Racine. So you think maybe it would be coming to Milwaukee, at least the discussion. Is this a good thing, or is this going too far?
I don't like it. I don't smoke. And I just think that, when you're out in the open, people ought to be able to smoke if it's a legitimate legal product. And in this case, it's one of those things that, in my mind, carries regulation a little bit too far.
I'm willing to bet that it does come to Milwaukee and that it does pass.
Well, certainly there's a movement in that direction for obvious reasons. The obvious reasons are the effects of secondhand smoke. Smokers, the health of the smokers themselves is not the only question anymore, because you can affect other people's health. I'm very glad that they've moved them away from immediately outside the doorways of the buildings that you step out of into the outside, because you used to have to, wave your arms, to get out a door.
Still do at some public buildings.
And I think it's a legitimate thing when you're affecting other people. This is deadly. It is hazardous to health, and secondhand smoke is hazardous to health, and it's a public health question. We hear so much about people standing up for the rights of smokers who don't stand up for anybody else's rights in America. And personally, I'm not so sure I care about the rights of someone who is going to be affecting the health of other people. They're allowed to do things to themselves, but when they start affecting the health of others, that's a public health question.
Kevin, what about the argument that, hey, it's still a legal product?
That's a very good argument. Until tobacco and using tobacco is declared illegal throughout the country,
prohibition doesn't work.
People should be able to smoke outdoors. We're not talking about a building now where you exit the building and 20 feet away light up. We're talking about a public park. Now, I will give all the credit in the world to my liberal friends. They are brilliant. They are brilliant in their strategy on this and other issues. And by that, I mean they do not stop. They are relentless. They work incrementally, and you alluded to it in your open. First, it was the workplace. Then it was public buildings. Now we're going outside into public parks where it shouldn't make a hill of beans a difference. You should be able to smoke outdoors in a park. Come on. They will not be satisfied, and this is not outrageous, until we're sitting here on interCHANGE on a Friday night talking about banning smoking in your own homes.
And they'll do that under the premise that the mailman delivers mail to your house and we shouldn't affect them with secondhand smoke.
So, Denise, are we going to get to a point where you can carry a loaded gun in your pocket, but you can't light up a cigarette?
Yeah, I think we are. And I think it's ridiculous that we're going to be able to carry loaded guns in our pockets. And I do think that in a public place, you have to take into account the rights of all of the public. and the rights of smokers don't trump the rights of other citizens.
Or vice versa.
And in public places, people who are affected negatively by cigarette smoke should not have to run a gauntlet of folks who are gathered at the bubbler or who are waiting to buy popcorn because there are other people who are sitting there smoking. Nobody has said you can't smoke in your own backyard. You want to smoke, go in your own backyard. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that. But it's not what we're talking about now. You want to smoke in your car? Go ahead and smoke in your car. You want to smoke in your house? Go ahead and smoke in your house. Do what you want to do that impacts the health of others in your own home. That's fine. I don't think as someone who does not smoke, even though I'm a former smoker, and that's probably the worst kind of person because we can sometimes be a little diligent about this. But I don't think that as someone who has difficulty being around smoke, I should have to subject myself to someone smoking in a public place. I have as much right to be. I have as much right to be there. I have as much right to be there, whether it's indoors or outdoors. I have as much right to be in a public place and not be subjected to smoke.
How many people are getting cancer because they were subjected to secondhand smoke at Kosciuszko Park on Milwaukee's South Side? This is a ludicrous debate.
It is not ludicrous at all.
You are not going to get cancer because someone in the same park you are visiting happens to light up.
Kevin, you pointed very well to the problem that exists right now with what is supposed to be a ban on smoking within 25 feet of buildings. It
That's a building.
But what I'm trying, let me finish making my point. The issue that you made was that it doesn't happen, that there are still people who are gathering and congregating in places where they're not supposed to smoke. There will be people, and there are people who continue to smoke and gather and congregate around places where other folks are publicly who don't want to be exposed to cigarette smoke.
And why are you allowed to? Why are you allowed to smoke outside the entrances to a public building?
You're supposed
because
to
you're outside.
You're supposed to be within 20. The reason that they put the 25 feet piece in there is that they don't want you to be around groups of people who are coming in and out.
Is because they didn't want to trample completely on smokers' rights. I'm sitting there at
Lake Park and I want to wait for a hot dog or a soda. I should not have to be subjected to the cigarette smoke of people who are smoking there, waiting in line to get something in a public place. It just should not happen. Just because it's legal to smoke doesn't mean that you have the right to smoke anywhere that you want to.
Well, that's good.
It negatively impacts the health of other people.
You don't, because the nanny state has been whittling away at every place. You can't smoke here, you can't smoke here, and they're not going to be satisfied until they come after your own couch.
Where in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights does it say you have the right to smoke?
All right. You have the right to engage in legal activity.
You don't have the right to smoke. It's not a right.
All right. Good. And we won't be able to afford to smoke in a while anyway. $65 a carton.
Oh, my gosh. Not that, too.
Finally, let's shift our focus overseas for just a minute. You know, international alliances are awkward things under the best of circumstances. And when they go sour, when, say, Pakistan tips off the bomb makers that were closing in on them, when Pakistan even arrests the people who helped us track down Osama bin Laden, Rick Horowitz thinks maybe it's time to call it quits. Rick.
Dear Pac, I never thought I'd be writing you a letter like this, but I have to face the facts. This isn't working out. It makes me sad to say those words, but I can't pretend any longer. Our relationship has to be based on trust, and we've lost that. We've been together nearly 10 years now, and even though we were kind of pushed into each other's arms by tragedy, and even though we don't have a lot in common, different cultures and religions and all the rest, I really thought we could make a go of it. And no, it wasn't just your nukes that attracted me. I thought we had something special, but the things that really matter to me, you don't even care about. You say all the right words. Your concerns are my concerns. Your terrorists are my terrorists. But when it comes to actually doing something about it, it's all a big nothing. And whenever I tell you things, secret things, you just blab them to everyone. So then I start keeping things from you, not because I want to, but because I have to. And then when you find out afterwards, you get all upset. You say, I'm the one who doesn't trust you. But how can I? I thought you'd be ecstatic when I got rid of bin Laden for you. Okay, and for me too. He was such a problem, you always said. If only we could find him. So then I found him right in your own backyard, and I gave him exactly what he deserved. And were you happy? Not a bit. You acted like I betrayed you, and then you took it out on our friends. You said they had to choose one of us or the other. How do you think that makes me feel? I hear what people say. They say you're only in it for the money. I never wanted to believe that. And if I was extra generous with you, $1 billion here, another $1 billion there, it wasn't that I was trying to buy your love or control you. I just thought you were worth it. But to take advantage of my generosity and then laugh behind my back, that's what really hurts. I don't see how we can possibly put things back together after that. But I'm willing to try if you are. Please?
Thanks, Rick, and thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.